Hi, Subramaniam Shankaran from IEEE. Data classification and the handling. Okay, now even generally, whenever we implement cybersecurity, okay, in the organization, we classify the assets. Okay, in fact, this comes under the asset classification or asset security domain 2 of CISSP. So, in an organization, we identify the assets as production assets, DR assets, test and development. Okay, in fact, if you have $1,000 to secure the assets, okay, we don't literally spend all the $1,000 on all the four different types of systems, right? Test system and development system are accessed only with the internal employees. But if you look at the production system, it's accessed by the users. Okay, it could be external facing, but irrespective of whether it's external facing or internal facing, okay, or restricted only to the limited number of people who are external to the organization. Okay, like a community cloud is what I mean to say. Okay, the production system needs a small utmost investment. Okay, for securing of the data. Okay, when it comes to the DR, anytime it might become a production system, so it requires the next level of expenditure. Okay, but if you look at the test system and development system, we don't actually invest more on the security. But again, when I'm not saying you should never invest on security, securing these systems, but relatively, it's not it's lesser. Okay, like the as compared to the production and DR system. Now, the production system is well understood by the sensitivity of the data it's going to contain. Okay, but if you look at the test system and development system, we don't have the production data. But if you look at the production system, okay, it has got the production data. DR system, okay, if it's going to be in hot site, okay, you're going to have the up to the second, okay, we say the heartbeat of the data on the DR system. So it is also what utmost importance. The only difference is, okay, it might have the data to the beat, but the data is not accessed by the external user. Okay, that's the only difference it actually makes. Okay, but we also have the insider attack. Okay, let's not get on to the intricacies of understanding or discussing about the threat factors, etc. Now, data needs to be classified. Okay, this classification is actually required so that you don't spend less, okay, or you don't spend more on the data which is not sensitive, and you don't spend less on the data that is actually sensitive. In fact, it's well explained by the U.S. former National Security Advisor, George Bundy. If we guard our toothbrushes and diamonds with the equal zeal, okay, we will lose fewer toothbrushes and more diamond. Okay, so the security implementation, okay, and security expenditure, okay, it should be apt to the data that we are trying to secure. Okay, now securing everything equally, okay, something which might sound very nice, okay, but practically it is useless. So we have something called as a data classification. Okay, every company will have what is called as a data classification policy or information classification policy. Raw information is data, and processed data is the information. Okay, it's vice versa. Okay, data getting exposed, information getting exposed, or disclosure, okay, which is the opposite of confidentiality, means that it is a breach. Okay, we don't say is it a data breach or information breach. Breach is a breach. Okay, if something is exposed, what is exposed, okay, determines, okay, the gravity of the incident, okay, that you have on hand. Okay, the development system, okay, the security breach happens and the data is lost. The data is not a sensitive data, it's not production data. It's a dummy data. Okay, you don't have literally an impact. Okay, so in the risk equation, risk is equal to threat multiplied by vulnerability multiplied by the probability multiplied by the impact. If the impact is zero, then you don't have a risk. I'm concerned only if the production data, an asset containing the production data. So the data is around three forms. Okay, so data at rest, data in transit, and data in use. Okay, it actually gives you the technical scope for the implementation of any compliances. Okay, so data is classified, okay, based on the age, okay, based on the usefulness, and based on the regulatory company. That's something that we are going to have a look at the next slide. Classification, the fundamental concept of the data handling. If you don't classify the data, you don't know how to handle the data. Okay, the public data, okay, you will be handling it with utmost care, whereas the classified data you might not handle with the care. Okay, so this particular video is going to lay the foundation for you how to classify the data and handle the data. So it involves categorizing the data into distinct classes. Okay, there's something called the labeling. There is something called the classification. Okay, so what is the difference between labeling and the classification? Classification is based on the sensitivity, whereas the labeling is based on the departmentalization or compartmentalization is what I actually call it as. Okay, for example, HR, okay, finance, okay, so let's say the material management, okay, let's say, because I worked in Hyundai Motor India, okay, that was in early 1997. Okay, now when you're going to categorize the data based on the department, okay, that is actually called as a labeling. Okay, depending if you're going to categorize, classify the data, classification of the data is based on the impact of the data when it's going to get disclosed, when it's going to get modified, okay, with respect to the integrity, it's going to get when it's going to get destroyed, okay, what is the impact of the organization? That is with respect to the availability. So CIA, confidentiality, integrity, availability, disclosure, alteration, destruction. CIA, opposite is DAD. Okay, now classification is a fundamental concept for the data handling. It involves categorizing the data in distinct classes of groups based on the specific characteristics. Okay, so the labeling process helps to make sense of complex data sets and facilitates effective decision making. Okay, if you don't have the data classification, if you don't have the labeling, okay, labeling might not be the security way of handling the data, but it is actually required. It facilitates you to handle the data. Okay, but data classification definitely is going to facilitate the secure way of handling the data. Okay, so value, age, useful life. Okay, why I'm saying this, because for example you have the credit card details. Okay, and Excel sheet has got the 100 credit card details. Okay, now, the 100 credit card details for the credit card that have been freshly released, okay, will have a specific value. Over the period of time, depending upon the usage, okay, when this data is going to get exposed, okay, might not have the fullest value because people would have used it. But credit cards are, valid for 5 years, okay, or 5 years or 7 years, depending upon the bank, okay. And the same data after 5 years, okay, will not have any value at all. Okay, so it'll be expired. Okay, so the useful life doesn't exist for the credit card. So the data, okay, the classification is based on the value and the useful life. There's something with the regulatory complaints, HIPAA, protected health information, okay, GDPR, personally identifiable information or personal data. Okay, so these type of informations are really required, or regulatory complaints are going to facilitate you to classify the data and also help you for securing it. There are regulatory complaints that are going to explicitly mention to you on how it needs to be secured. Okay, sometimes yes, sometimes no. Sometimes there is subjectivity depending upon your the national law. Okay, not every country will say AES. Okay, should be implemented for the encryption. Right, there could be something else also. You can go for RC6 or RC5, whatever it is. Okay, so it depends upon the national law for securing your data. So the concept of the data classification is based on the value, okay, the useful life, and the regulatory compliances. So these are the commercial classification of the data. Now, the commercial classification and the government classification that we are seeing on the video, okay, it's not something, it's a must to follow. You might have more or you might have less. Okay, so the public data is something which, when it gets exposed, okay, doesn't have any impact to the organization at all. Sensitive data, yeah, for example, the test results, etc. Internal data is circulated within the organization. Okay, the organization-wide announcement. Confidential data will cause and harm if it's actually exposed. Restricted data could be like a trade secret. Coca-Cola's recipe. Okay, in all my CISSP classes, I mentioned about the Coca-Cola recipe, which is supposed to be the highly prized secret in the world. It was. Okay, and I still discuss it, but I'm not sure what the fact is because there's nothing constant in the world. Okay, now the government classification, there's something called unclassified data, which when it get exposed, okay, doesn't cause any damage at all. Okay, sensitive information is it's not unclassified, but it's also something which you will not expose it to the public. Confidential data will cause a damage. Secret data, okay, will cause a serious damage to national security. Top secret, grave damage to national security. So these are the top secret data. Okay, armed hostilities. Okay, with an ongoing war. Okay, between Ukraine and Russia. There's an ongoing war that's happening between in the Middle East region between Israel and Gaza. Okay, the Palestine. Okay, so that information when it gets leaked out, okay, that becomes which will cause a grave damage to the country. Okay, it's called the top secret. To disruption of the foreign relationships. Okay, so it could be different. For example, last week, where the Pakistan ambassador was sent back when he landed up in US. Okay, it is actually causing a lot of ripples in the diplomatic world. But again, so that's a disruption of the foreign relationship. Compromise of the national defense plan. Okay, this is also something which, when get leaked out, going to cause a grave damage to national security, sensitive intelligence operations, and technological advancement. Okay, when we had been celebrating the open AI, okay, see the deep seek got released a couple of weeks back, okay, from the China. Okay, again, it caused really an impact to the open AI. I'm not here to discuss about which is better, but when the deep seek was hit with the cyber attack, within few days the open AI was also hit with the cyber attack. Okay, so there are a lot of things that we understand from this. Okay, so the prominence of China emerging into the AI market, India emerging into the AI market, US emerging into the AI market. Okay, definitely this will cause a lot of attacks. Okay, now secret government secrets, national security information, law enforcement information, diplomatic communication, okay, and critical infrastructure details. All these things are classified as a secret government data, and there's something the confidential government program monitoring, federal tax information, protected health information with respect to the US. So every country will have similar data, which is supposed to be a secret, or which is supposed to be a top secret, which is supposed to be a confidential secret within the government arena. Okay. Now, data handling. Now, how do you handle the data? Okay, so now you have classified the data depending upon the impact it's going to cause to the government, or depending upon the impact that is going to cause to the organization. How are you going to handle the data is very important. First thing, you'll identify the owner, custodian, processor, and the steward. Okay, who is going to be the owner of the data, and who is going to be the custodian, the IT department, okay, the custodian of the data. Who is going to be the data processor with the GDPR, PDP, DPDP, PDPL, KSA, PDPL, UAE, PDPA, Malaysia. Okay, we all know, okay, who the data subject is, who is going to be the data controller. Data controller is actually the owner. Who is going to be the data processor, sub-processor, sub-sub-processor, sub-sub-sub-sub-processor, etc. Okay, so the data owner is actually the organization who is going to collect the data. So in the terms of data protection, okay, so these guys are actually called the data controller. Okay, data steward, okay, is actually from, or steward, steward is basically from the organization, the business. They are not technical guys, but they ensure that the day-to-day operations are being done properly by the IT team. IT team becomes the data custodian. So you need to identify who the data owner is, okay, who the data custodian is, who the data processor is, who the data steward is. Data handling requirements. Okay, so the marking of the data needs to be there, labeling the data depending upon the department which uses it. Where are we going to place the data at rest? Where are we going to deal with the data in transmission, data in transit? Okay, and how are the data going to be destroyed? Okay, so basically what I would still say is data in transit, data in use, and data at rest. Okay, this needs to be, the technical scope should be clearly understood. Okay, only then you can handle the data properly. When I say the data at rest, internal storage and external storage as well. Okay, not only the server where the data is actually resting, but also on the external. If you're going to take a backup to the offsite, okay, even the backup tapes are something which is going to come into the scope. Okay, so security follows the data, privacy follows the personal data. Okay, as simple as that. So wherever the data is going to be at rest, wherever the data is going to be in transit, and where the data is actually going to be in use, all these things will come under the scope until the data is literally destroyed. Destruction also. Okay, it all depends upon whether it's going to be a HDD or SSD. HDD, you've got an AC degaussing and DC degaussing, overwriting, okay, and then you've got something called the physical destruction, which is actually not possible on the cloud, because in the cloud we have to go for a crypto shredding. Okay, but if it's going to be in solid state devices, you have to go for an ATA secure wipe. Okay, so the destruction also has got different methodology depending upon what sort of a storage that you're actually using. Whether it's going to be a traditional IT environment or it's going to be a cloud-based environment. So security controls, okay. So depending upon the data in transit, okay, data at rest, okay, data in use, you need to put in the controls in place to ensure the access controls are properly implemented to ensure the confidentiality, integrity, availability, Okay, they are all taken care of properly. Encrypting the data after identification, authentication, authorization, it's only the encryption that is going to secure a data, because identification can be spoofed, authentication can be broken, authorization can be creeped. Okay, after all that, when a hacker is going to look at the data, if the data is actually encrypted, he cannot comprehend the data. Finally, the incident response. Okay, you're trying your level best to ensure that the security incident doesn't happen. Okay, but if at all it happens, how are you going to handle it? Salzer and Schroeder's principle. The last one is compromise recording. Okay, they're not saying that you have to always record you have to always record the compromise. That is not the only thing that you have to do, right? You are trying to put in your perimeter security and defensive that depth to ensure that your data, the security incident doesn't happen at all. But there is also a zero-day attack, okay, which is beyond your control. If at all that happens, okay, the security incident handling, ISO 27018, okay, is one of the beautiful guidelines, okay, that you can actually follow to implement the cyber security incident handling program. Okay. Data retention disposal, retention policies and disposal methods. Okay, data retention policy with the GDPR, DPDP, PDPL, PDPA. You cannot hold the data, indefinitely. Okay, you need to have a data retention policy. If you want to say that the useful life of the data is only for 5 years, just hold it for 5 years. After that, delete it. Okay, there is no way you can say that I might need this data in the future, so I'm going to hold it with me. That doesn't hold good. So GDPR is a UK GDPR, EU GDPR. They are transforming, okay, the way the data storage is also being handled. Okay, disposal methodology we discussed on the last slide. Now, this picture is something which I had taken from CISSP for Dummies beautifully. Okay, they have specified action. Okay, is a server storage, endpoint storage. In fact, all that has been mentioned here is data at rest. Okay, but I would also request you to extend it for data in transit and for the public, confidential, restricted, and secret. So, which all the channels the publicly classified data can pass through? Confidential data, restricted data, and secret data can get transmitted. Okay, is also something that you need to capture. This picture, okay, is worth thousands of words. This is what the data handling is. Okay. Now, the Subramaniam Shankaran from IEEE is speaking to you about the data handling and data classification. Join us for the world-class CISSP training program, guaranteed certification program. Cheers and bye-bye. Write to us on training at ieees.org.uk. I repeat, training at ieees.org.uk for your next winning schedule for CISSP. Cheers and bye-bye.